straight into it. I thought the first point that I wanted to make, and it was absolutely evident in these two games, was how the game of finals football is different to home and away. It's tight, it's contested, the pressure goes up. There's no easy ball, and the four teams that played on the weekend, all displayed finals footy at its best, and the two teams that came away with the wins were ultimately very happy with their work, as they should have been. The coaches were rapt. There's moments in those games that you'll never forget, and it's the contest, it's the effort. But just to put a few numbers behind this to I suppose to signify the importance of what I'm talking about. There's less time or space in a finals game. So the pressure ratings, we know that if you're up around 200, that's really high, and it's difficult to be able to withstand high pressure from an opposition. Port Adelaide were at 195, Hawthorn at 198, Brisbane at 192, and GWS were at 200. So if you get that sort of pressure in a game, you see it, you feel it when you're at the stadium. You realise this is a hot game. There's just nowhere to move. Whenever you have the ball in your vicinity, in your area, it's hotly contested, and when you've got it in your hands, you've got very little time to use it. Contested possessions go at around 1 in every 3 possessions in a game of footy, in a home and away. On the weekend, it was closer to 1 in 2. It was closer to 50% of contested footy. So if you can't win your own ball, if you can't win a contest against a direct opposition, you're not going to run around. You weren't going to run around the ground on Friday or Saturday night, racking up numbers in handball receives or loose balls in time and space. That just wasn't there. So the game changes. Port Adelaide were able to enforce this game on. Now, Hawthorn aren't a massive uncontested football side, but they have been able to play the game in time and space for the most part because they've been so clean and so hard in tight. Port Adelaide matched that. They made it really hard for Hawthorn to get the game on the outside. They made it hard to get it off the line. Port Adelaide forced it down the line as often as they possibly could, and they were able to own that little circle. That's largely the way that the game went on Saturday night as well. GWS absolutely controlled it for nearly 3 quarters. And then when Brisbane were able to win the contest, they scored heavily from stoppage. They got a couple of centre bounce goals, and they were able to take the contest towards their goals, giving them 11 goals in that last 40-minute period, which was huge. Point of reference, just to look going forward, Geelong are the team that have the highest ratio of contested possessions for total possessions in their season. They're the number 1 contested ball side in terms of ratio for possession. Port Adelaide are 8th, Brisbane are 10th, and Sydney are 11th. So if you're looking forward about a team that has actually been schooled up on playing with less time and space versus the opposition, let's keep an eye out on the Cats.
All right.
Second one to look at was Port Adelaide, and their performance was huge. I'm going to focus on one particular division, but the pressure, as I just said, that they were able to bring to bear on a team that was expected to go across and win, the pressure that they were able to and to a man across the board that they were able to lift to, given their performance the week before, was huge. And I think if you're a Port fan, you would have loved seeing that. There was just no space given at all, and Port Adelaide were on from the very first contest to the very last. The group that I thought stood out to me was like, how are they going to replace Houston? How are you going to replace Farrell? How are you going to replace Burton? And they replaced it with pretty much 3 teenagers. So Burgoyne went from a wing, 21-year-old Burgoyne goes from a wing to half-back. He's played 35 games, has 25 disposals, gets forward and kicks a goal in that last quarter. Logan Evans, who's been picked up in a mid-season, and ends up, he's an 18-year-old kid, playing his 12th game, has 22 touches. And then got Josh Sin, who is playing only his 9th game as a 19-year-old. He gets the job done. But then again, Lockie Jones is 22. Miles Bergman's only 22. So you have 5 players that are 22 and under in that back 7. Zerk Thatcher probably played one of the better games I've ever seen him play. He's only played 76 games, 26-year-old. And then there's Aaliyah, who's the experienced one, the only bloke in that group that's played over 100 games. But that back line, it was supported by great pressure up the field. And you see the midfield rubber to do their job, but to see three young players like that, Burgoyne, Evans and Sin, just stand up and play their role on those high forwards of Hawthorn that have been able to get out the back and that have challenged the opposition. They were given the opportunity to play a very different game against those Hawthorn forwards than other defences have had to play against Hawthorn because of the work around the contest. But I thought that all three of those boys were huge.
Went all the way with those small forwards, shut down their uncontested game, shut down the corridor, forced them to go wide and slow, which did give them a chance in defence. But, there's still some areas of Port Adelaide's game that they'll want to address this week. I thought they lacked a little bit of composure when they won the football back and they were prepared to hack it long inside 50 for shallow entries. I feel like there was a moment there where they just kept bombarding it long inside forward 50, which was too easy to defend shallow. So they'll look at that, but every team will have some areas to look at.
One thing I thought, like Port Adelaide were happy to go down the line. They were going skinny inside their forward 50s, a la Brisbane Lions a lot, like happy to take territory and force the game into contest. It did open up. The game did open up a little bit more. There was a period there in the third quarter where it went up and back for 10 minutes and the game was as open as you would like to see it. But Hawthorn weren't able to impose the brand that has worked really well for them because of Port's pressure.
Tell us about the Lions, Bucks.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe this.
Oh, look, how good was it? And it comes back down to firepower. Brisbane have been one of the heaviest scoring sides in the last 4 or 5 years. And then when called upon, they'd only kicked 4 goals in the first half and 20 minutes.
Their forwards were awful. Like Rayner, I haven't seen him play a worse game. Zach Bailey was off. Charlie Cameron was off. Eric Hipwood was nowhere. And they all ended up having their moments in probably from the halfway point of the third term onwards. But there is so much room for upside in this performance from Brisbane.
So when you've only kicked 4 goals in 100-odd minutes of footy, or a little less, and then you go and kick 11 in your next 40 minutes, that shows you how much firepower this team has. And it was finished off by a player who was maligned at times. Joe Danaher was able to go bang-bang at the end of the game to give the Lions the win. The 5 goal, when Lockie Ash kicked a goal for the Giants in the 20-minute mark to go 44 points up, then in the next 9 minutes, the Lions put on 5 goals. One, they go really quickly kick a centre bounce goal to Lohman over the back, who somehow had to beat a player before he snapped that one. I don't know what was going through his head. Oh, but then it comes back in. McInerney kicks a goal out of the ruck. Cameron, after great work by Ashcroft on the goal line. Bailey, once again, centre bounce. Bailey runs around, snaps a goal from 45 metres, and then Zorko ends up getting that free and finishing. So in that night, it's literally 9 minutes and 10 seconds of footy. They've whacked on 5 goals. Now you're back within 3 goals. That's that little period there was enough
Give them the
to
belief.
fuel what Brisbane needed to do and to plant the seed of doubt in the Giants' minds. So for them to be able to do that, then that was even before Danaher came to the party. The Fletcher goal. There'll be some vision behind the goals that will haunt the GWS players.
Callahan,
I don't know where he knew exactly what he was doing in that one. He got caught the wrong side of the ball, and Fletcher got out the back and kicked that goal. Zorko running around, Peatling had done a great job on him, but Zorko was able to get forward and kick 2 goals late. So that's even without looking at an Archie who won key contests and created opportunities for his teammates, and Rayner, who, as you said, was well held. So there's plenty of upside there for the Lions, which is pretty scary. Yeah, the lament that the losers will feel will be profound. For the Giants, they led for 250 minutes of 269 minutes of the 2 finals that they played in, and they were able to. They got smacked in final quarters. And it's not so much that they gave up scores; they just weren't able to score themselves. They only had 3 scoring shots in each of those games against Sydney and the Lions. Brett Daniels, who All-Australian player, who we've admired for everything that he's been able to do in his career, had a bad minute, gave a 50-metre away that ended up in the Cameron goal. that put the Lions within 3 goals in the last quarter, and then had that kick off the ground from a free kick that was paid to Cadman, and probably should have known better than in that moment to try and kick it off the ground. So there's a couple of moments there for him. Lockie Keefe had a shot on goal, 11 minutes to go in the game. It was ultimately the Giants' last score. It was their 100th point, and they in 11 minutes of football they weren't able to score beyond that. They weren't even able to get the ball in their front half often enough, and it was Jesse Hogan or bust in many ways for them. But they'll and Sam Taylor has had moments there that you'll never see a more desperate player, but he's going to be lying awake, staring at the ceiling, sort of thinking about those. For Hawthorn, obviously the Sicily shot. They lost momentum. They only had 42 inside 50s. They've only had less inside 50s once this year. It was the Geelong game where they got beaten 5 or 6 weeks back. They lost ground ball only the 4th time. There's a hands in the back there, Georgiades v Scrimshaw, that they'll probably go to. But the contest that really summed it up was Jarman Impey running through the middle, tackled by Darcy Byrne-Jones, and Impey actually had open space in front. At any stage in the season, that either goes forward to a ground ball for a small Hawthorn brigade to get to work and they score, or Impey beats the tackle,
breaks the tackle,
gets another 15, 20 metres, they run and carry another 50 and then kick a goal through the top of 50. So that contest alone probably summed up the Port Hawthorn contest, and the fact that Port were just able to take Hawthorn's game away from them. So the losers will be feeling that, and for what it's worth, finishing matters. Sicily kicks that goal. The result's different.
We had 3 shots in the last.
But but even that shot from 50, he would have been super confident that he was going to finish that. And you can see by his reaction, he's always going to make the distance.
Kingy and I had Sam Mitchell on before the first final so not last Friday, the Friday before, and Kingy asked Sam Mitchell, who would you want? You're having a shot to win it. Who would you want? I think Hardwick and Sicily were the 2 that he mentioned. So
there you go.
Couldn't have been in better hands. They would have been feeling pretty comfortable about that. He'd missed the other dribbler. The one that he did kick, I thought was touch from Travis Boak. Not sure why they didn't overturn that one. Clearly touched, and Boak has since confirmed that. So, could have gone either way in a number of areas. But for Hawthorn, I think you look at their personnel and you go, this is what gives you a lot of confidence. So Day doesn't play. How important is he? If he plays, they win that game. I would think he's better than 5 or 6 points, or certainly a goal. Mitch Lewis, I'm a big fan of. If they can get him right, and it's a big recovery from the injury that he's had, but Mitch Lewis instead of Chol in that forward line, I'm going, this is frightening. And then you add Barras and Battle into that back 6.
I mean, even if Sam Frost had have played, but every side is going.
Everyone does, but I'm looking at more what's coming back for Hawthorn from a personnel point of view, and then you get the improvement from Connor McDonald, from McKenzie, from Ward, from Watson. They're in a really good position. Plus, they've had the experience of playing in finals, big games, under lights, which they haven't had much exposure to this year, getting it done against the Western Bulldogs, good side, nearly getting it done in Adelaide against Port Adelaide. I would think that they would be my favourite to win the premiership next year.
I'll counteract that with one thing. They will never be free of expectation the way that they have been this year, ever again.
Yeah.
So in 12 months' time, they meet this. If they're in the same position, going in the same opponent, they will have far much more expectation, and dealing with that is challenging for every team, for any age group, for any level of experience. So the freedom, the relative freedom that they've enjoyed over the last 3 months, they've played, they've played free of that. They've played with abandon. They've taken the game on. There's been no expectation.
They've been off Broadway a little bit.
They will never find themselves in that space again. The football.
Yeah, but I feel like this group is going to be able to handle that.
You reckon?
I think so. I think they will. From the challenges they've had in any of the big games that they've played in this year, they've performed pretty well. But you're right. Like if you Channel 7 or Fox and you're going, who do we want on Thursday and Friday nights next year?
They are compelling.
Hawthorn. So they're going to have to, that's a different level. They're going to be prime time, I would think, 8 or 9 times next year, Thursday, Friday night. That's where they're going to be. A lot of eyeballs on them. So, yeah, it's definitely a different challenge. And the opposition have a good look at you in the off-season and work it out like Port Adelaide did on Friday night. And for the Giants, have we got Adam Kingsley? Can I just play? I just want to play this from Adam Kingsley after the game. If he has said we're not the finished product all year, your players start to believe that. Well, why aren't they the finished product? You're clearly a better side for 3 quarters than Sydney on their home deck, the team that finished first. So are you the finished product against them for 3 quarters? You're clearly the better side, 44 points up against Brisbane. You're a class above in every aspect, including from the coach's box. Why aren't you the finished product? So I would be advising him to speak to some people that he trusts around changing his language. Chris Scott doesn't talk like that. Like, Chris Scott gets smashed by St Kilda in the second half with 2 games left in the season. And it'll just be, there's no panic. If we play well, if we play the way that we know we can play, we're going to be a really difficult side to beat. He doesn't talk about not being the finished product.
I sense he was angry. Yeah. Like, so where Sam Mitchell was disappointed and gutted, I thought Adam Kingsley was angry. And he's got every right to be. There was a miss. We talk about the Impey Burn Jones tackle. There was Ainsworth was there. They had him cold. He'd got past one tackle and he was there for a second one, and it was Cadman and it was O'Halloran. So you talk about like those players. They needed to have the killer instinct. They missed a moment to be able to stick that tackle and go back the other way. We've already spoken about Callahan with the Fletcher goal, the Keefe miss. Yeah, even in that Taylor, the Sam Taylor deliberate, Himmelberg is right. Is right there. If he'd have worked towards that contest rather than running away from it, it looks like Taylor is tapping the ball to Himmelberg. There's so many little things that they can go to, and maybe that's what Kingsley's talking about. We're not the finished product.
But if he said that all year, he said, I've said that all year. If he said that all year to his group, maybe they believe that they're not the finished product. Fair point, because you are what the environment that you swim around, and you've got a habit of either regressing or lifting to what you manifest, and the coach is responsible for that. So I think that's a fair summation, and something that he'll reflect on. We got the full Ken Hinkley experience. And I don't think there's a guy in the couple of minutes after a backs against the wall win, and we've seen it quite often in his tenure. He's not a great celebrator. Like when his emotions kick in, I don't reckon he doesn't do elation that well. He's all over the joint, but I thought that that circumspect reflection is a representation of who Ken is. His players clearly love him. And they play for him. And when you meet him, when you rub shoulders over the years, I've found him to be a really engaging guy, soul of the earth, country man. And it doesn't surprise me if you put, have you done it?
You put me in that position.
Have you said has that
absolutely
happened? You have done it.
Absolutely, it's happened. And if you've got a situation like that where you feel like you've been disrespected, your club's been disrespected, your team, your players have been disrespected, you take it personally. I think it probably, you're in that situation and say you sidle past within 5-10 metres of Jack Inovan, you're saying exactly what Ken said, but maybe you're only saying it once or twice. You're not going on with the third and the fourth. And that's probably that one, the going at him again and again, that actually then riles up, Sicily. And then Sicily comes back, and then they can't move because they happen to be, getting ready to pay tribute to Bruce. So that's sort of it. And when the cameras pick it up, and when there's so much emotion around it, and it's already highlighted because of Ginnivan's tweets or responses or his position in the sports media at the moment. But it definitely was blown out of proportion. I'm amazed by the fine. I think that amazes me.
So
the AFL thought that was worth a fine. I thought it was worth being censured. And I think the coach needs to hold himself to a higher account. There's no doubt you need to be able to control emotions. That's exactly what Ken has just told us. But please, $20,000?
So just on that, the AFL Coaches Association, where do they sit in this? So is there a more toothless organisation in football than the AFL Coaches Association? If they are there to do one thing, it is to challenge the AFL on ridiculous fines like this. I haven't seen anything, Mitch, from them yet. I'm assuming they're going to come out really hard on this. I'm assuming there's a vehicle for them to be able to challenge this $20,000 fine. But where is the Coaches Association right now?
Well, they're probably speaking. They would have spoken to Ken.
Well, you'd hope so.
They probably would ask him, what do you want done? And what do you think Ken's response would be?
It doesn't matter what Ken wants done.
No, it does.
You see Paul Marsh running around last week like a chicken with his head cut off. Like, that's what he's doing for what he believes is right for the AFL Players Association. Now, you can agree or disagree with his methods of what he did last week, but at least he was visible, standing up for what he thought was right for the players. Where is
What does the
Coaches Association?
What does the Coaches Association do when the coach himself?
But I don't know if Zach Butters and Port Adelaide didn't want Paul Marsh running around like that last week, but he did it anyway.
The coach himself, the person involved himself, has said, I shouldn't have done that. So he basically fell on his sword.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he deserves a $20,000 fine.
I know, and we'll probably hear from the Coaches Association
well, you'd hope so.
about
it's Monday.
That.
This happened on Friday.
The reality is that Port Adelaide, as their statement suggested yesterday, they want this done. They don't want it to be spoken about, and I reckon if you asked any of the Port Adelaide players or staff members or coaches, you'll get a very...
Are they the most toothless organisation in football, the Coaches Association? Are they?
No.
Where are they?
Well,
you say no, they're not?
Well,
what do they do?
What do you expect? What do you expect?
Better conditions for coaches. Better conditions for...
When Paul Marsh comes out, does it actually change anything?
Well, at least you hear from him.
All right, so that's all we need to do is just...
Well, they need to make a statement that this is not on. Otherwise, the AFL just dish out fines for whatever they think, like ridiculous. He said, Jack, you're not flying anywhere. And he's apologised 3 times for it, and the AFL have still fined him $20,000. $20,000.
I reckon if there's one group of individuals that are hard as a collective to manage, it would be the 18 senior coaches.
Well,
we wouldn't agree. There wouldn't be any agreement. You couldn't get a quorum of 18 senior coaches to agree on much at all.
You know what? I reckon you could get them to agree that the AFL Coaches Association need to do more. And that's putting in the assistants in there as well. Like, the conditions that some of the assistants work under is just ridiculous. So I'd love to see more from the Coaches Association. I can't believe we haven't seen a statement from them condemning the most ridiculous fine we've ever seen in the history of football.
This is a left field question without notice. When's the last time that you went to a public venue to watch a sporting event?
I hate doing it.
I did it on Saturday night.
Did you?
Went to the Lions Giants game at the sport. Remember Sports Bar?
Of course. If I was going to watch it anywhere, I'd watch it there. How was the experience?
It was awesome.
Was it?
It was awesome. I was a bit thirsty.
You get heckled and can't hear the commentary and.
Dean from Avoca, I'd met 20 years earlier at a cellar door at Mount Avoca Wineries and ended up sitting on a shared sort of table next to him. And Broads and I just sat there and watched it. It
a couple of quiet ones?
Awesome atmosphere. Yeah, it was great.
How good. All right. No, I haven't. I can't remember the last time I did that, Nathan.
How many goals will Nick Watson kick next year? Well, I think we were talking about this earlier.
Didn't I say 30? Did I say 30?
I think you tried to say 40. I think you tried to say 40. Where did he get to?
Didn't I revise it to 30?
Oh, you revised it, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it was an over-under question, and I think I had 30, the over or the under.
What was he just under that? But if you're kicking 7 goals in 2 finals, that is that augurs really well, doesn't it? For him to be able to stand up in the fiercest of situations and to be able to finish. So he's hit 4-1 and 3-1 after not hitting the scoreboard as often.
25-27 from 18 games.
52 scoring shots. And I think he'll just keep going. Geez, he finished the year off exceptionally well.
Just on the Hawks, did they do the right thing by extending Gunston and Bruce from what we saw in the final series?
I think so.
They look a bit cooked.
No, I thought that the move to sub Gunston out was excellent because it was a contested game and Gunston wasn't doing an important role as such in absorbing one of the Port defenders. and I thought it had become a real arm wrestle. So I think that was the right sub to make. I think you need that experience and stability in the locker room at times. Now, other players, other leaders will come through, Sicily, Newcombe, etc., Will Day, but it doesn't hurt to have players there that are going to play bit part roles for you on field, but really important roles off the field.
If De Koning doesn't play for Geelong this week, where does it leave him? Talk is he's not going to play. It's
really
amazing, really, when you think about it. And didn't play last week when Tom Stewart was a late withdrawal, so that's somewhat of a surprise. Has rucked at times this year. Thought he was going to be the competition's best centre-half back for the next 10 years, 2 years ago.
It's a great position for Geelong to be in.
Where does it leave him, though?
You got Henry and Kolodjasny that are doing these roles.
Yes, but where does it leave him?
Well, it leaves him out of the best side at this current time. I think
so
what
if
Geelong,
I'm a club, just
I'd definitely be asking the
just
question.
load up and go and get him. Load up. When you look at the market for key defenders,
I should
Carlton. How much could Carlton use him?
Without even analysing it too much to feed into your narrative.
Yes. You be the voice of reason here,
No. Chris Scott has been notorious, and Geelong have been notorious for playing players in other roles so that they're even more attractive to opposition teams at times. Now, maybe playing him in the ruck for that couple of weeks.
You think he's done it?
Well, there might have been.
Deliberately?
Well, no, there might have been something about that. Because, and in the end, it might be about trying to unlock something in the player that they don't know yet. I think they do it for players that they keep, but they probably, I have seen it done with players that they've moved on and let go.
The biggest crime you've seen on Best and Fairest night, other than me not winning in 2005, Ben King kicking 55 goals and not finishing top 10 in Gold Coast Best and Fairest.
I didn't see that. Is that what happened?
55 goals, and I don't think this is the first time it's happened to Ben. They just don't they don't rate him and what he does.
Who's they? Because it's
the
new
coaches,
coaching staff.
And previous coaches as well.
Mm.
And I reckon there'd be some North fans out there that surprised Harry Sheasel didn't win North's Best and Fairest. Finished third. Luke Davies-Uniacke won it. Tristan Cherry finished second. Comment on that.
Those three were always going to be the best performed. But no, Sheasel had a great year, but missed the last couple. It always, depending on what the Best and Fairest voting is, some clubs, the way they do it, you might only miss 2 or 3 games, and it's nearly impossible to catch a guy who's played the whole year. I know that Geelong are a side that take 3 or 4 games off the table, like your worst 3 or 4 games off the table, given that they're going to rotate players through the season. So I think a Best and Fairest should reflect what the clubs and the coaches' philosophy is, and maybe Ben King, maybe his last 6 to 8 weeks were. He really dropped off. He wasn't kicking straight. He wasn't competing quite as well.
I know that, but 55 snags, it's hard to do. Not many players did that this year.
Joe the Gooses these days.
Okay, top 10. Could De Koning be involved in a Bailey Smith trade?
That has come through about 5 or 6 times.
Jake and who's that one from? Matt.
What do you reckon? Would Western Bulldogs
don't need him?
Desperate for a De Koning?
Wouldn't have thought. Just put one of your tools back, and that would solve a lot of problems.
Well, it asks the question about tall players, key position players in any shape or form. I mean, Mac Andrews obviously just signed that massive deal, but you need to be able to go forward and back. Sam De Koning's a quality player. Was very stiff not to get All-Australian in his first year.
Ask the
Premiership
question.
player already.
Ask the question. Go and get him.